Right, so it's roughly a week after the release of The Knights of Guinevere, and one of the most interesting topics of debate regarding this show is not the story, nor the characters, or even the art style. It is in fact the message and the themes laid into the setting and characters. This show is most definitely a criticism of corporate greed, monopolies, and class divide, but the way in which it does it and what makes it so effective can go under the radar for a lot of people. Luckily for you, I've been spending the last year of my life on classes related to work and psychology, so I am very well primed to tell you how it does this instead of finishing my essays. But first, a recap to help you remember exactly what happened in the show so far. Even though it has only been a week, if you haven't watched this pilot 5 times in 3 days like I have, you may have lost a few of the finer details. The show opens on a flashback scene inside of Olivia Park's bedroom, where she is working on fixing this Guinevere model. We will be calling this particular one Gwen Prime to avoid any future confusion. She can be identified through any action that would not be typically programmed into a Gwen android or by this malfunctioning middle finger. Gwen Prime is Olivia's personal toy that she likes to use to deconstruct and put back together over and over again in some sort of sick promise to fix her. It was likely gifted to her by Orville when she was young, and she's kept it over the years. Of course, due to her lacking the technical knowledge of how to fix an android, Gwen Prime is a mess of malformed circuits and leaky appendages. This is how it is able to do the things that we see in the pilots that the other Gwens shouldn't be able to do. After being yanked by her entrails onto this balcony in order to see the new part of the park that Orville has constructed for Olivia, Gwen Prime has had enough of this and throws herself off the balcony in an effort to escape. Flash forward several decades through this montage and we slowly see the deterioration of this franchise. We begin with our star princess on the rise, making appearances in multiple different IPs, before public opinion of the show starts to tank and live-action remakes that nobody wants are produced. Commentary around the Gweniverse switches to a rhetoric that the kids of the new generation will never have it as good as past generations did. We then move to the ran-out-of-budget arcade, where a young Andy and Frankie hack a claw machine to get free attempts for a Gwen plushie. Personally, I would be aiming for a different character, but to each their own. After completely failing at this, they run face-first into Gwen Prime, but this time she is done up proper and in a real costume. Frankie fixes her finger and gets a real earnest thank you from the robots. Cut to the modern day, and Andy is haggling with the local shopkeeper who has decided to be classist towards her for working directly under Park Planet in its engineering labs as a crownie. Why she didn't just get Frankie to walk up there and ask is beyond me. Regardless, Frankie makes herself useful by hacking this vending machine for the parts they need, and they go back to their very humble shared living arrangements. But not before the shopkeep reveals that despite the capitalist dystopia going on, mahjong is still a popular pastime.
Your ass is gonna pay next time at mahjong!
At the house, Frankie reveals all of their strange little mechanisms that they've built purely out of a love for the game, while Andy furiously works on a discount Barney the dinosaur as part of her job. As is the case with most software engineers, she is horribly overworked and has managed to make it through the whole night without sleeping. Frankie, meanwhile, is still working menial labor in 2 different jobs. One as a factory worker cranking out merchandise, and another salvaging that same merchandise when it gets thrown over the edge of the park and into the water. Her boss in the latter job is Sparky, the most uncloseted homosexual on the face of the planet. He's slimy and money obsessed and uniquely intrigued by the Guinevere android caught in his net. After dodging the feds, they carry the android down to a storage locker where Frankie pitches the idea of repairing it in order to get a job as an engineer, because obviously your boss is going to get behind the idea of you applying for other jobs. Back in the sky, and Olivia is now on her deathbed, being cared for by a collection of androids who are trying in vain to get her to eat anything. Gwen Prime has escaped her clutches once again, but Olivia doesn't know that it's ended up with Sparky yet. She also appears to have some sort of degenerative mental disease here, which is causing her to get really distraught over the possibility of not getting Gwen Prime back. So much though that she sends this behemoth of an enforcer out to get her. Back with Andy, and she is now very pissed off because her project was deemed worthless by the higher-ups and she has now been fired. On her way back home, she runs into this tool who spits on her shoe and then begins to cough up a lung. A blue lung to be specific. As in the blue lung disease that was teased all the way back in the very first piece of promotional material we got for this show. Blue lung appears to be a contagious disease that may be tied to the genome destruction listed here in the Park Planet website. After having this guy cough on her, Andy later spits up the same blue liquid when shaking hands with Sparky. We then hard cut to this trailer made by Orville literal ages ago explaining how the Gwens work and how they remember every single interaction any one of them have had with any person in the park ever. This must take up so much storage space. Frankie somehow has access to this trailer and is watching it on her computer when the imaginary stuffed animal friends she has come to tempt her into going after Gwen Prime and fixing her despite Sparky's orders. She doesn't take a whole lot of convincing. Andy, on the other hand, is a little bit more skeptical, somehow afraid of jail time despite the fact that the prison system may be better than the outside at this point. Regardless, after a heartfelt speech and a callback to 12 minutes ago, Andy relents and agrees to go to the labs in order to get the proper machinery in order to repair Gwen Prime. Sparky is of course aware of what these two are going to try to do, so he ambushes them on the platform to the labs in the sky, demanding the Gwen droid back and threatening to do a number on Frankie's smile while he's at it. Andy manages to pull off a nat 20 deception check to convince him that the droid is worth much more when it's working, and he agrees to let them go up and do whatever it is they need to do. Unfortunately for these two, the audience has already forgotten about the massive fuck-off robot, so it surprises them in the lower labs. They are only just able to escape it before Gwen Prime comes in and absolutely wrecks the thing. Finally getting up to the repair hall after this, Gwen Prime's software is reset and it recognizes Andy and Frankie in their childish forms again before the credits roll. Okay, so that's a pretty in-depth summary of the pilot, but it's also obviously not what you came here for. You saw the mouse in the thumbnail, so you want to know my opinions of this show's criticism of Disney. Before I get people in my comment section telling me that this isn't a Disney-specific criticism, and rather it's based on consumerism and massive corporations in general, yes, you can interpret it that way, but you're missing the forest for the trees. This show takes place partly in a massive theme park centered around a fictional mascot that is exorbitantly expensive. The view of this brand was initially very positive and results in a lot of cherished childhood memories, but as they try and expand more and more and make products that nobody asked for, their reputation gradually sours. It is grossly exploitative of people who work below the executives to keep it running and likes to twist classic media and fairy tales for their own stories. This is about Disney. But if you really need to be beaten over the head with it, I suggest you take a look at this Gwen right here. Now that we've established that this is a show talking about Disney, let's take a look at the characters and how they exemplify different aspects of what this corporation can do to you. We start with Frankie, the character who gets the most screen time and is for all intents and purposes our main protagonist. Frankie is a representation of the young and naive, who don't understand what is going on or how they are being exploited. They are a wage slave for this park, performing manual labor that they hate and scrap collecting that they also hate just to get by. This is entirely the fault of the park, but Frankie never connects those dots that they are the reason she is so miserable. Instead, Frankie holds an idealized version of the park itself and believes that if she can just continue climbing the ladder that things will get better. She holds the propaganda that Park Planet is a place of magic to be completely true, and is willing to do almost anything to get a shot at propping up that ideal image. Andy is the next stage of understanding and is also the most hateful towards the park. She's been exposed to what really happens in the upper levels and is fully aware of the fact that it doesn't get any better, but now she's stuck in the system. She can't go back into manual labor down at the lowest levels, both because she needs the money and because she would be relentlessly mocked if she did. She also has a view to everything that Frankie and the rest of the public don't get to see, the failures. Partly because she makes some of them, and also because she's just forced to be around them a lot more. It's not all sunshine and rainbows like Frankie wants to believe. It's corporate trickery and the wasting of thousands of hours of people's lives for projects that aren't quite up to whatever imaginary standards the higher-ups decide on that day. Andy's main flaw, however, is believing that something can be changed. She still has heart and she still believes that what she's doing can have a real purpose. This is wrong. Sparky is the final stage of the corporate pipeline. Acceptance. He's been doing this his whole life. He knows how the system works and has ins to all sorts of areas within it. He hates the fact that he's working for these people, but he still can't leave because the pay for his work is only just enough that he's able to survive, so he's accepted this way of life for himself. He is also disillusioned by the park like Andy, but unlike her, he truly doesn't believe that there is anything he can do to change it. And then finally, we have Olivia, the monarch at the peak of this corporate pyramid. A senile, old, and disease-ridden husk kept alive purely because it is too much trouble to replace her. She never does anything of note, hell, she barely even knows what's happening, but she's in charge because the hierarchy deems it so. She still has access to extreme levels of power because that's what her position affords her, and she couldn't care less what happens so long as she gets what she wants. The Knights of Guinevere is a criticism of this system, one that forces the bright, the excited, and the talented into their little boxes to serve the greater machine. It stifles their creativity and forces them to do only what those higher on the ladder demand of them, regardless of if any of the people they are actually trying to entertain want it. It criticizes the endless cycle of Disney consumerism. They pump out junk with a ridiculous price tag that is bought and then just as quickly forgotten. In fact, it paints this scenario in a better way than reality because at least they recycle here. Of course, the most literal interpretation of this is Guinevere herself. While in the dreamland of childlike wonder and in front of carefully curated cameras, the princess is the epitome of perfection, even down to the fact that she's never allowed to have a single wrinkle on her face. In reality, however, she is twisted and broken, used and reused by those in power like a plaything. There is a reason that every attempt to fix Gwen by Olivia just makes her worse. She doesn't understand what she's doing. She has no knowledge of the steps involved in making something magical. She only sees the destination, but with no journey. She will keep trying, and she will keep failing because she doesn't know any better. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.